I think my wife cheated on me during a trip back home. She's denying everything, and I feel like I'm going crazy. We've been married for 4 years and together for 5. I've always felt my wife and I have a solid relationship. We're intimate 3 to 4 times a week, go on dates at least twice a month, usually on weekends unless we're busy. And overall, we get along great. We laugh, enjoy each other's company, and rarely argue. Last weekend, my wife traveled out of town for a wedding. I was supposed to join her initially, but about a month ago, I got on call for work, couldn't leave. She was very understanding, especially since this was a wedding for people I didn't even know, so it didn't feel like a big deal. She left Thursday night. Wedding was on Friday. She spent Saturday visiting family and came back home late Sunday evening. We didn't talk much on Friday, just a few text exchanges, which I was fine with. I assumed she was busy socializing and probably didn't have her phone on her. The wedding was in the evening, and I figured the reception lasted late into the night. Saturday morning, she sent me a picture of herself with her family at the wedding. We chatted briefly about how things went, and that was it. Usually, when one of us is out of town, we make a habit of calling each other around 10 p.m. But on Saturday night, I didn't hear from her. When I tried calling, it went straight to voicemail. I wasn't overly concerned, thinking maybe her phone was off or she was caught up spending time with her family. On Sunday afternoon, she called to let me know she was heading to the airport. She apologized for being out of touch, and that was that. She had to return to work early Monday morning, so she didn't have time to unpack after getting home late Sunday night. Since I had the day off, I decided to do her laundry. While sorting through her clothes, I noticed she had packed her nicest lingerie. To be clear, my wife isn't someone who wears lingerie regularly. She's more of a comfortable granny panties and basic cotton bra kind of woman. The only time she wears lingerie are for special occasions, anniversaries, Valentine's Day, or birthdays. Seeing it packed for this trip, combined with her not calling me on Saturday night, made me uneasy. When she got home, I asked her about it. At first, she said she sometimes wears lingerie, which I called out as untrue. In the 5 years I've known her, she's only worn lingerie for intimate moments. Then she said it was because it worked better with the dress she wore. But I've seen her wear that same dress before, and she definitely didn't need fancy lingerie for it. I directly asked her if something happened. She denied it, saying nothing happened and was offended that I'd question her. She said I shouldn't be suspicious just because of what she packed.
I was betrayed by a long-term partner, and honestly, the fact that she skipped your regular call makes me even less inclined to jump to conclusions about infidelity. When my ex was cheating, she was overly attentive and responsive, likely out of fear that I'd get suspicious. Her behavior became more consistent, not less. I agree with those saying the lingerie could have many explanations, ranging from cheating to simply wanting to feel good in her dress, or needing the item as part of her outfit for the wedding. Maybe she even planned to send you a picture as a wish you were here moment, but never got the chance. Personally, I never wear lingerie. I own a single set, which I wear only on special occasions, whether or not intimacy is involved. I think my ex of 6 years saw me wear it maybe once or twice. I get why these two things would make you feel uneasy, and this is something that needs addressing. You both need to have an honest conversation. However, it's important to remember that if you accuse her and she's innocent, there's no taking that back. Approach the situation with something like, I'm feeling really anxious about your trip and want us to figure out why, rather than if you didn't cheat. Why did you pack lingerie?
I might be late to this thread, but I still want to comment because I've been exactly where you are now, super anxious and overthinking things. Sometimes, all you need is a dose of logic to break free from that mindset. If the only evidence you have that your wife might have cheated is that she packed lingerie, think about what that really means. Now, ask yourself, is it more likely she did this while being in what you describe as a happy, healthy relationship with you, person she initially planned to attend the wedding with, or is it possible she just did something slightly out of character, like packing a particular outfit and not using her phone for one evening? I truly think you should give her the benefit of the doubt. Insecurities in relationships can turn into self-fulfilling prophecies if you're not careful.
Girlfriend lied and went to an event I wanted to attend without me, and now I don't know what to do. I won't start with the usual, our relationship is perfect, that you often see here. I'll admit this has been one of the most challenging relationships I've ever been in. I still love her deeply. She's beautiful, strong, ambitious, successful, and independent. However, my girlfriend has extreme avoidant tendencies, and this has created many issues in our relationship. She's in therapy, but it's primarily focused on managing her OCD and a related eating disorder. Fun fact, all 3 issues are often comorbid. She struggles to express her emotions and needs. She has difficulties with communication, commitment, and compromise as a result. We've been dating for a little over a year. Before me, her longest relationship lasted less than 2 months. She tends to shut down and run from relationships if she feels smothered, let down, or criticized. It doesn't take much for her to feel that way. She's aware of this and is trying to work on it, but it's challenging for both of us. We're both huge theater nerds. A few months ago, we took a trip to visit her grandparents. grandparents who live about 2 hours away, and I got to meet her college best friends for the first time. While we were there, we attended a show with her friends. Honestly, I had a great time. Her grandparents love me, and I hit it off with her friends. There's another show coming up that we both have ties to. It's the first musical she saw with her grandparents, and I worked on a production of it in high school. I asked my girlfriend if we could go. I even offered to take her grandparents and treat them to a nice evening. They don't go out much anymore, or we could go with her college friends. She immediately shot down the idea, saying she didn't care much for that show, something she had mentioned before, and didn't want to see it again. I let it go. That show was last weekend. Not sure if this part is relevant yet. Feel free to skip it. We had a bit of a fight on Saturday. I was about 15 minutes late to pick her up for brewery date. She was really disappointed. She's ended past relationships over similar issues and gave me the silent treatment all day. Eventually, I managed to get her to open up, and we apologized to each other. We ended up having a decent night at home. The next morning, she told me she wasn't feeling well and wanted to go home to rest. I drove her back and asked if she needed me to stay and take care of her. She said no, she just wanted a quiet day to herself. I told her to let me know if she needed anything and went home. I didn't hear from her all day. Even when she's relaxing, we usually exchange memes and Snapchats of our cats. She didn't even open my messages. Earlier in the week, she had a migraine so bad I had to take her to the ER, and her sister just had a baby who's dealing with some health issues. By late afternoon, I started to get really worried. I decided to check her location. She wasn't home. She wasn't even in our city. She was leaving a restaurant and heading to the theater to see the show I had really wanted to attend. I'm guessing she was with her friends again. The restaurant is one of their favorites. It's a nicer place that would require a reservation, and the show is a popular one. All of this must have been planned well in advance. I'm not worried about her cheating. Her friends are married, and she wouldn't have gone with anyone else except maybe her grandparents. I feel so hurt by all of this. I genuinely wouldn't have minded if she told me she had plans to see the show with her friends. I just don't understand why she lied about not wanting to go and then hid it from me. I think she simply didn't want to explain that she preferred to go with her friends instead of me. I'm not sure how to approach this with her. She's extremely sensitive to criticism. Even though I'm hurt, not angry, she's likely to take it as an attack. She also doesn't like when I express my feelings to her and tends to shut down and withdraw. I'm worried that if I bring this up, she'll just end the relationship to avoid the conversation. She's threatened to do that before over much smaller issues. How can I address this without pushing her away? Update. I spent a lot of time thinking about what to do. I made my post on Monday, and we had a date scheduled for Wednesday. I decided I would bring up the issue then. On Tuesday, she was having a bad day at work, didn't let me know. She texted me about a frustrating email her awful boss had sent her. I thought my response was appropriately supportive and validated, essentially backing her up, saying she was right to be upset. Her response was, "Is that all you got out of this?" I probably should have thought more about it, but I was dealing with my own work problems and a headache, so I lazily reiterated my initial response, again, agreeing that she had every right to be mad. She didn't reply. I didn't send another message, but reached out via Snapchat and Instagram to see if she'd respond there. She didn't open any of my messages. Since I'm always trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, I assumed she was busy and would get back to me when she could. If you didn't gather this from my original post, my girlfriend really struggles with communication. Finally, for hours later, she replied, saying she didn't feel emotionally supported and needed space to think about the future of our relationship. I was super confused and asked what was wrong. Her reply was, "I just had a really bad day, and you didn't even bother to call me." Kind of snapped a little. I asked why she hadn't responded to any of my messages or told me something like, "Hey, I had a terrible day at work, need to hear your voice," or anything like that. I pointed out that she never explicitly asks for emotional support. She just shuts down until I figure out what she needs, or she gets frustrated and gives me the silent treatment. Her response was, "I didn't reply because it wouldn't matter. I can't always be the one putting in the effort." I explained for what felt like the 1,000th time that I can't read her mind and that she needs to communicate her needs. She's deliberately avoiding the work by refusing to open up and ask for help. I get that it's hard for her, but I can't compensate for that on my own. I pointed out that I didn't realize she was having an awful day. I just thought she was dealing with a regular work annoyance. She never tried to clarify how she felt or what she needed. Her response, "I've been saying I need more effort from you for months, and nothing has changed. This is exactly the argument I didn't want to have, and you forced it." I replied that I desperately wanted to support her. She wasn't giving me anything to work with. I gave her the space she asked for and told her I loved her. The next morning, she asked if she could come over after work to talk. Once I confirmed, she went back to giving me the silent treatment. Shortly after, I found myself blocked on Snapchat and Instagram. Oddly enough, that was what finally made me realize how poorly I had been treated. I had been starved for emotional and physical intimacy. She didn't even like holding hands, let alone hugging, and was constantly walking on eggshells. But I was stubborn. I loved her. I really wanted to make things work, and I still wanted to talk things through. She had pulled a similar stunt before, and we ended up staying together. When she finally came over, we started discussing our communication issues. Her main point was that she felt with a compatible partner, everything should come naturally, like knowing when your partner needs something without them asking. She said she often felt overwhelmed and just shut down, and asking for help felt just as overwhelming. It clashed with her need to feel independent and self-sufficient, and fueled her fear of a toxic, codependent relationship like her parents had. So she felt this was a reasonable expectation. I explained that she was asking me to read her mind and putting all the emotional labor on me, which wasn't a fair or realistic expectation. She started deflecting, as she often does when she's uncomfortable with a conversation. We jumped around to various topics about our relationship. She randomly said she didn't feel like she really knew me. I asked what she meant, and she said she never knew what I was thinking or feeling and thought I was too closed off, none of which is true. It felt like projection on her part. This hit a deep insecurity for me. She didn't care enough about me to try to know me. She rarely engaged with my interests or hobbies and almost never asked me questions about myself. When she did, they were usually negative ones. On the other hand, I made every effort to learn about the things she cared about. She then mentioned that we'd been dating for a year, didn't have plans to live together. Again, this hit major insecurity of mine. I'd been trying to bring it up for months. I asked her directly when she was having problems at her house. She was considering moving out. This was back in late July, near our 1-year anniversary. She gave me different answers every time I asked what she wanted for herself or our future. She didn't just change the subject. She never brought up our future on her own. I was always the one to mention it. I made it clear that the only reason we didn't have plans for the future was that she didn't seem ready to make it. I also said there's nothing wrong with that. She needed to tell me if she wasn't ready for that step. Pointing all this out made her go quiet. Not the silent treatment, but when things get too intense for her, she just shuts down and withdraws. It took her a few minutes to snap out of it. Once she did, I explained that I felt like I was the only one putting effort into our relationship. She asked what I really wanted. It started in a somewhat roundabout way. I explained that 6 years ago, I had to call off an engagement with my fiancée after she became an abusive alcoholic. I spent the next few years working over 80 hours a week at a job I hated while watching my dad die slowly. All of this she already knew. What I was going to say next was that after going through that, I wanted to find my person and build a better life. But before I could finish, she cut me off. She said maybe I had started dating too soon after my dad's death. We started dating about 9 months later. It completely threw me off, and it took me a minute to recover. Before I could continue, she said she didn't think our communication styles were compatible. I asked if she genuinely believed she had good communication skills. She said she felt she did. Finally, brought up the issue. I told her I knew she went without me and explained how I knew and why I checked her location. She looked visibly shocked, shut down again. I asked why she lied to me twice. No response. I asked if she had been cheating. She said no. She went with her college friends. She finally confirmed it had been planned even before I asked about going. As I suspected, she just didn't want to have what she thought would be an uncomfortable conversation. I asked if she thought that was okay. She said yes. She was worried if she told the truth, I'd pressure her to let me come along. I asked if I had ever pressured her into doing something she didn't want to do. She said yes. And I asked her to watch movies she didn't like repeatedly. Another sensitive point. I rarely got to pick what we watched, and she seemed to avoid movies that were meaningful to me. At Christmas, I asked to watch Home Alone to continue a tradition I had with my dad. I wanted her there with me for support. She refused and found every way to invalidate my feelings. I asked if I had pressured her beyond asking her to watch some of my favorite movies. She said no. I asked if I had done anything to make her feel unsafe opening up to me about any of this. She said no. She just wasn't the type to open up like that with anyone except her sister. I asked how she expected to have a serious relationship with someone if she couldn't open up to them. She said she felt the right person would make it easy for her. I asked if she thought she needed to work on herself, be a better partner. She said no. She didn't even want to be a partner anymore. She said our relationship was adding too much stress to her life, to the point where it was affecting her work and her recovery from her eating disorder. I'm not sure if this is true. She was doing great with it. I asked where the stress in our relationship came from for her. She said the constant obligations and my constant requests for more from her. I brought up how much I had invested in our relationship, driving her around for 2 months while her car was in the shop, visiting her in the hospital every day, and sleeping on her couch to take care of her post-surgery, covering most of our date costs, giving her money when her bank account was overdrawn, helping her move on short notice, and always showing up for her whenever she asked, and often when she did. I tried to model good relationship behavior, and it was exhausting and painful not to have that effort reciprocated. Instead, I rarely got to plan dates or choose movies/shows because she refused to compromise. I worked hard to open up to her and to get her to open up to me. A few times I asked for her emotional support, even for small things. She often ignored me or made me feel bad for asking. It didn't feel like she wanted a relationship. She said she didn't, and that she realized she hadn't been feeling any emotional connection to me the past several months. I asked why she didn't say anything. She said she thought the right partner wouldn't have needed her to say anything. I didn't have the energy to say much more. I told her I loved her and wished her the best, but I wasn't going to put effort into a one-sided relationship anymore. She said okay. She couldn't understand why I didn't want to stay friends. She seemed hurt and confused. She sent me a few texts later that week saying she hoped I was okay, and I replied that I was. It's been radio silence since then. I've been reflecting on the relationship and am still working through my feelings. The breakup wasn't the end of the world. It feels more like a second chance to find someone who loves me as much as I love them. Thanks for all your advice, Reddit. Help me see things more clearly.
Wow, I know you might not feel it now, but in the long run, you're so much better off. She wanted everything without giving anything in return. Expecting relationships to magically work out isn't realistic. Honestly, I'm picking up some narcissistic vibes here. This whole situation sounds exhausting. Take some time to heal, be kind to yourself, and remember that you gave your all to make this work. In the end, it was her unwillingness to put in even the smallest effort that caused this to fall apart, not you or anything you did wrong.